Hi, everyone. Today on the Writing Gym podcast, we're talking with author John David Mann once again. He's here to share even more amazing tips with us. This time, he focuses on the publishing journey he took with his new book, The Recipe. You're going to walk away with specific tips on co-authoring and how to complete your own publishing journey. Check out the cheat sheet at www.writing-gym.com/therecipe.
Welcome to the Writing Gym Podcast. We're here to pump up your writing. And now your host, Andy Brixey, personal trainer at the Writing Gym.
Hi, I'm Andy, personal trainer at the Writing Gym. Welcome to the Stairmaster with John David Mann. I'm excited to introduce you to this week's guest, but first, a word from our sponsor, the Writing Gym. You know, you could break free from feeling like your writing is never good enough. You know you could write freely and achieve your publishing dreams. You're tired of rejection and lying awake till 2 a.m. wondering how you could have fixed your manuscript. Wallowing in self-doubt is not getting you any closer to your writing goals. You need real standards, real support, and real change. Are you ready to transform your writing and take it from the slush pile to publishable? We are currently accepting select writers in the Writing Gym. Visit www.writing-gym.com to apply. And now I'd like to introduce our resident writing coach, the gal who helps you pump your writing into shape in the Writing Gym. Welcome back to the Writing Gym podcast, Annalisa Parent.
Well, thank you, Andy. It's always a pleasure to be here with you.
And this week, you guys, I have a fun little writing story to share about Annalisa. Everyone has their own little rituals in writing, but Annalisa has one particular one that some of you might enjoy. Every hour or so when she's working, she gets up and dances around like a whirling dervish to activate her creativity. I think that all of you should share with us what you do to keep your creativity going in the Facebook group, Write to Publish. Annalisa, tell me there's a photo or some kind of video of you doing this ridiculous dance.
I am ashamed to admit that there actually is a photo.
Oh, we will 100% be putting that photo in the show notes at www.writing-gym.com/therecipe. And now to introduce you to this week's fantastic guest, author John David Mann is best known for his award-winning business parable, The Go-Giver, written with business thought leader Bob Berg, and his New York Times best-selling military memoir, The Red Circle, with former Navy SEAL sniper Brandon Webb. John doesn't publish books, he writes them. Someone else publishes them and markets them. But when more than 40 publishers passed on his latest manuscript, he was faced with two choices: shelve it or take it on himself. The Recipe is a tale of heartbreak and redemption, a meditation on great food and the secrets of the kitchen, and a life manual, all wrapped together into a story that is being called an instant classic by former world heavyweight champion George Foreman, a timeless fable with guidelines for living that will last a lifetime, best-selling author Daniel Pink, and the feel-good book of the year by screenwriter James Justice. Thank you so much for joining us today, John.
It is my pleasure to be here once again.
I have a bone to pick with you.
Excellent.
That was a food pun. Your book made me hungry.
Yeah. For more books? No, for food.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about, the meals that these characters are preparing, and there are a lot of lessons that come through the meals, but they're beautiful. I feel like I learned a lot about cooking. So, we had Chef Carroll on here as well, and he shared some of his expertise from the kitchen, but wow, I mean, what a beautiful book, both from a writing and a culinary perspective. So thank you for sharing that message with the world.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I will tell you that in the process of writing this book, there were vegetables harmed in the process of making this book. I spent a lot of time in the kitchen, actually. I did a lot of cutting, a lot of slicing, a lot of peeling, a lot of cooking, a lot of searing, a lot of what's in the book. I want to say I did not do the same thing with my Navy SEAL sniper books. Disclaimer. I did not go out and shoot, but yeah, I did a lot of cooking, and I hope that people who read the book will, in fact, go to their kitchen and make delicious food afterward.
Yeah, I think they will. And tell us a little bit about that, because I know that you and Chef Carroll hopped into the kitchen together and you put together some special videos for your readers. So tell us about those.
So that was a blast. Just a few weeks ago, actually, I flew out to Houston, which is where he lives. He is executive chef. Well, your viewers probably know all this already, but he's executive chef at one of the busiest country clubs in the nation, outside Houston, or in Houston, Texas. And he has a little lake house outside, which I went and visited. And we spent 2 days with the professional video crew filming Charles cooking, and his daughter also. Cooking a selection of recipes from the book, some of the critical recipes that have story value in the book. And I did most of the eating. And we talked our way through the cooking process, talked about the dishes, talked about the principles in the book, talked about the characters in the book, and just had a blast doing the cook, talk, eat, discuss process, which we are making. Right now, we're still in post-production. We're still making those into videos that are going to be, premiums for our pre-order bonus offer for people who pre-order the book. So that's what we were doing there.
Wonderful. I love that. And, so your book, The Go-Giver, and its sequel were also parables. And, here we've got a parable that's based around the kitchen, of course. And, for those of us who don't know, if you're listening, a parable is a story that teaches life lessons through the story itself. And so the most famous parables, of course, come in the Gospels with Jesus, who taught through parables. But how was it different for you, John, to move from the business parable to a kitchen parable? Were there similarities there, or were there unique challenges? What was that like?
Yeah, it was completely transparent and easy to move from the other. For me, the thing about parables that's really challenging, it's a challenging area to write in. If you talk to people in the business world, let's say, about parables, you'll get a lot of, oh God, I hate parables. You get a lot of that. A lot of people, I've had people who say, John, I love you, but I can't read The Go-Giver because it's a parable, and I don't read parables. I hate them. And there's a reason some people hate parables, which is that it's really easy to write a parable that comes off as sort of a thinly disguised, it's really like a lecture. It's like a PowerPoint. Like you want to get your principles across, and so you create a couple of characters and you call them Alice and Betty and Tom and Fred and Nancy and whatever, and you make them have a story, and it's stick figures. It's not involving at all. And what it really is again, a thinly disguised opportunity to make your points, point A, point B, point 3. And that so doesn't work, because it's, a story has got to be a story. I believe all valuable teaching happens through story. Great public speakers in the business sphere or in any sphere, doesn't matter how dry their books might be, if you get them up on stage, they'll tell you stories. That's how they teach. That's what effective speakers do. That's what effective writers do. So to me, the challenge of a parable is, by definition, it's a simple story. Like in The Go-Giver, the hero of The Go-Giver is a guy named Joe. Well, what color is his hair? I have no idea, and neither do you. No one does. I mean, people might have an opinion, but it's just their opinion. You intentionally leave out a lot of the detail that you'd put in a novel. Mm-hmm. So it's stripped down, and that's intentional, because you want to make the characters as sort of everyman as possible, as relatable and universal as possible, and keep the story really simple. One of the beautiful things about my experience with The Go-Giver is how many people write to Bob and me and say, I really don't read books, or I rarely read them. Like, I'll read a book a year, but I couldn't put it down. That warms the cockles of my heart. It's like, I love that.
Yeah.
But the challenge is to write a simple, readable book, but that's also real, has some depth, has some characters that you care about. And so that, for me, is more the challenge of writing a parable. Going from business to cooking was just like taking off a sweater and putting on a coat for me. It's like, I love cooking. I love business. I love them both. I know them really well. I could write a parable about Navy SEAL snipers at this point. It would be just the same thing. The challenge is to find the story in there, and to find the people and fall in love with them, and find out what happens to them and make that feel real on the page.
Right. Yeah. Now, I'm going to dig into this one a little bit because I know the last time that we had you on the podcast, I believe that was in the spring, you were talking about this particular book and how you'd written it, and that you'd had so much success with so many of your books. And I think that you said, to paraphrase you, something like sent it out to many publishers and nobody would touch it. And what was that like, and how did you come to success with this? Tell us about that journey.
What was that like? That was painful. Is what that was like. It was also unexpected. When I sent the manuscript, it took Charles and I like 7 years to get to the point where we could carve out the time to put the book together. I mean, it was a long time coming, and my agent knew about it. We talked about it for years. And when I sent her the manuscript, she called me up just about screaming over the phone. She said, "This is the best writing you've ever done. This is going to be so great. We're going to take this to New York. It's going to go to auction. All the major houses are going to fight over it. You're going to get a 7-figure advance. It's going to be great." None of those things happened.
Oh, no.
I mean, the thing that did happen was we did take it to New York, but nothing else happened. So what it was we got it to publisher after publisher after publisher, and all the editors who read it liked it. A lot of them loved it. Some of them raved about it. We got emails. I've got on my computer emails from editors that I would be happy to put on the back cover of the book as endorsements. Mm-hmm. They were that much of a rave. They were like, the characters are so rich, and I was so moved by the boy and by the old chef, and the recipes are tantalizing, and the setting is so real, and the life lessons are so valuable, and we're going to pass. And they all had to pass. Mostly it was that it just didn't fit their catalog. It's like, as you pointed out, it's not about business. Like our Go-Giver publishers, Portfolio, they published all our Go-Giver books. They are wonderful partners. They just published this book with us, Total Focus. It's a business book that I wrote with my Navy SEAL sniper friend. Portfolio did this too. They're fantastic. And they read the recipe and they said, "God, we love this. We just keep publishing it. It's not in our niche. It's not. We do business books." I had a few other people like that who basically said, "God, I would love to publish this, but it just doesn't fit." What a lot of people said was, "We can't figure out where it does fit. What shelf does it go on in Barnes & Noble?" So this is interesting. You get these stories. We've all heard stories about, Colonel Sanders, who got rejected 100,000 times with his fried chicken recipe, or about Mark Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield, whose book was rejected by, 100 publishers, and then it became Chicken Soup for the Soul, which sold 1 billion copies. And there's, those stories are legendary, and they're largely true. And the lesson that people usually take, the moral of the story usually is, well, pay no attention to rejection. They don't know what they're talking about, because they may reject it, but you're sitting in a gold mine, and go ahead and persevere and believe in yourself, because it'll be great. Well, maybe not. The first 15 or 16 people who rejected the Go-Giver, they were right to reject it, because that manuscript was so not ready. If they had accepted it and we had published it then, you would have not heard about it, because it would have just sank like a stone. It was not ready. It was not the book it could be. Mm-hmm. And so Charles and I really took the rejection to heart and said, are they all right? Should we just forget about this? Or should we just, we revised it and polished it a lot. So here's what we decided. We believe there's a huge group of people out there, people who love personal growth and love great food, and those two sectors overlap, those two demographics overlap. That's who this book is for. There is no shelf that fits that description at Barnes & Noble. There is no niche. There is no category on Amazon that says people who love personal growth and cooking, foodies who like principles. There's no category for that.
Spiritual foodies.
Spiritual foodies, exactly. That's not there. But my God, the people are out there, right?
Absolutely.
That's what we believe. So the question is, do they exist? We totally believe they exist. So then the question becomes, can we reach them? And that's where we are now. We decided to self-publish, which neither of us have done. It's a whole new entrepreneurial enterprise. It's terrifying. And the big question is, can we find those people and let them know about this book? And that's what we're in the middle of finding out.
That's great. And it would tell us when your official launch date is, John.
October 17.
Great. All right. Well, I've been hogging all of your time because I'm so excited about this book. I'm going to let Andy jump in here.
Yeah. So you've never launched your own book. You've never done this whole process, and neither has Chef Carol. So what would you say is the single biggest challenge in producing and launching your own book?
Oh, boy. I should say I have self-published a couple of other books, but neither of them, in neither case was I really intending to market them broadly. Sold, a couple of thousand copies. It was just sort of a labor of love that was never intended to be a real book launch. So this is, so I've been through the mechanics of that, but no, we've never done this. What's the biggest challenge? I think there are two. The first challenge of self-publishing is that, as you guys know, self-publishing has a bad name because there are so many books out in the marketplace that are self-published because the means exist now that make it fairly easy to do, that are just really not very good. And it hurts my heart to say it. It hurts my heart to see it. I got one in the mail today from a guy who's great. I love his ideas. I love what he wants to do. And it's just not professional. You see that constantly. It wasn't well edited. It wasn't well designed and laid out. The cover wasn't professionally designed. So you see these books that come that are screaming self-published. Mm. And it is an automatic turnoff, so that a lot of people will never even get a chance to find out how delicious was the idea in that book. There are a lot of books that have wonderful ideas in them, but they needed to be professionally delivered, and they weren't. So that's the first big challenge. You have to get past that. Operationally, for us, the big challenge is we're both really busy. Chef Charles runs food for one of the busiest country clubs in the nation. He has 75 employees with 3 kitchens, 5 restaurants. They put on something like 800 banquet events per week. Jeez. And he runs it all. I have 2 books right now that have October 1 deadlines, and one of them I haven't started yet. And today it's August 23rd, and the other one I've just begun. It's like I am jammed to the wall with writing projects. So neither of us have time to just hurl ourselves into this project and do everything. We have to be really selective in where we put our time, where we put our focus, and where we put, to be frank, our limited budget. We don't have a huge budget to throw at this. So we've had to be really, really entrepreneurial, really selective, and really strategic.
Yeah. Well, let me just say thank you to you and to Chef Carol for both coming onto our podcast and spending some time with us and our listeners to talk to us about your process, especially if you've both been so busy. So thank you so much.
Oh, God, it's our pleasure. Seriously. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is part of our strategy, talking to you.
Yes. Well, we're excited. And, full disclosure, I have had the honor of being part of your launch team and reading that book in advance. And I've got to say, I'm one of those, you said this about the go-giver, but I couldn't put it down. And that protagonist of yours, I was so concerned about him. I wasn't turning pages. I have a Kindle app on my iPhone, so I had like 100 words per page.
Right.
I had 6,000 pages or something. And I'm just flipping, just waiting to see what's going to happen next. So this is a real page turner, and I know it's going to sell well, John. It's got an important message, and it's very entertaining. So you guys out there listening, pick up a copy of this book, The Recipe. So talk to us a little bit about how you measure success, right? So this is a big venture for you. You're putting this out into the world. You're doing this on your own. You don't have an editor or publisher or whoever, a publicist breathing down your neck saying, you've got to sell X copies or whatever. How are you going to know that you've been successful with this book? How does that feel or look like for the two of you?
When we're on the cover of Time magazine.
All right.
No, that's a great question because, one of the early decisions I made, this is going to be an indirect answer at first, get there. One of the decisions that I had to make was, who am I going to listen to? This would be the same, by the way, if I were launching any kind of business. There are so many experts out there. I just did air quotes for those of you who are listening and not watching. There's so many people who can tell you definitively how to successfully self-publish and self-promote and self-market. And if I may be rude, 95% of them don't know what they're talking about. I mean, there's so much advice and so much of it is bad. Or partially good, which is almost worse. It's like, so I really had to figure, I can't read all the books, even if I wanted to. There's 1,000 books on Amazon about how to self-publish or self-market or self-promote your books, right? You know this, better than most. So I had to really be strategic about who to listen to. One of the first things I did was pick out I listened to people I know I've had a long time relationships with, whose opinions and judgment I trust from experience, like Bob Byrne, like a writer friend of mine, Dan Clements. Some people I've known for years. And I from that, I picked out a book by Tim Grahl called Book Launch Blueprint. And I made that my Bible, essentially. And one of the things I got from him was this question of, what's your benchmark? What's your goal? How do you define success? And he said, I think it was Tim who said, because I have a couple of people I've been following. I think it was Tim who said that people who create a sales target for success, like 10,000 copies, or no, it wasn't Tim, it was another guy. But anyway, he said that sales targets are bogus.
No, it was Tim, because you recommended that book to me, and I read it anyway.
Good.
It's a fabulous book, so I second your recommendation, and I can affirm that it was him in that.
Yeah. And sales targets are tricky, and I definitely did not make bestseller lists my target. I've been on bestseller lists. I've been on the New York Times bestseller list, Business Week, Wall Street Journal, and USA Today. I've also had books that should have been on those lists, even though they're numbered and they weren't. It's such a racket, and it's such a heartbreak in the making. If you get on a bestseller list, then Mazel tov. That's fantastic. It's a great little badge to wear on your web page, but it's a terrible goal, I think, because you're setting yourself up for disappointment, particularly because there's nothing that you can do personally to make that happen. It's not under your control. It's outside your sphere of influence. You can pay someone $10,000, some outfit who promises that they'll get you on some list, and that they probably won't, and it's not worth it. So I made as my benchmark 100 reader reviews on Amazon our first day. That's my goal. And I'll tell you where I got that from. Is one of the other people I listened to is one of my favorite authors, a guy named Harry Bingham, who's a British author who runs a writing consultancy in England. He's really, really brilliant. And he's the author of one of my favorite mystery series, the Fiona Griffiths mystery series, which I adore. She is the best mystery protagonist ever created, in my opinion. So if you guys love mysteries at all and you've never read Harry Bingham's Fiona stories, you've got to do that. But I'm on Harry's email list, and I got an email from him earlier this summer basically saying, hey, listen, I'm about to put out a new Fiona book, and I'm writing to 150 of you. I have 1,000 on my list, but I'm writing to 150 of you who are my best readers, my most faithful readers, and I'm going to offer you a digital copy of the book in advance if you'll just do one thing, promise me you'll leave a reader comment on Amazon the day it comes out. Because you know what the mark of a successful restaurant is. Mm-hmm. You launch a restaurant, what you want is people who walk past you on the street to see a full restaurant. If they see customers in there, it means, the food must be good. That's what reader comments are on Amazon. If you put a book out And in the first week it's out, you get like 5 reader comments. And people who bump into that book will go, nothing's going on there. And they'll just walk on by. But if you see 45 reader comments, even if half of them are negative, they'll go, whoa, something's going on here. And they will go, it makes a difference. The Go-Giver just passed 1,000 reader comments a few months ago. Now it's at 1,200. And that was really cool for Bob and me. So I reached out to my email list and said, I'll give you a digital copy of the book if you'll do 2 things for me. One, read a comment on Amazon the day it comes out. And 2, tell me your favorite quotes, because I'm going to make those into shareable posts. That idea came right from Tim Grahl, of course. And I'll tell you what I learned from this was, I'm going way beyond your question, but I'm almost at the end of my paragraph. What I learned from this, Annalise had mentioned this launch group, or this group that she's part of is reading. I learned that cultivating an early reader group before you launch is, I think, the single best thing you could do with a book. Giving your content away for free is an incredibly valuable thing. I learned this from Steve Godin 10 years ago, right? And I forget the other writers who were writing around that time. But Love is the Killer app. Who was that? That was Tim Sanders. So giving away your content for free is one of the best things you can do strategically to market yourself, but you want to do it strategically. Cultivating an early readers group is incredibly powerful. I just thought that I was going to get people to leave reader comments and give me their favorite quotes. And I started getting like emails from these people, and they started telling their mothers and their kids and their siblings about it. And my older brother joined and sent me 17 pages of corrections to the book, which was fantastic because my book needed all those corrections. I got people sending me ideas about how to do a podcast here or a marketing thing there. And it's like there's so much buzz going out around this book because of this little reader group. It's better than I could have gotten if I'd spent $50,000 on a publicist. So, lesson learned. What was your question?
Right? That question was actually about the metric of success, but I think that you pretty much just gave a blueprint about how to succeed.
100 reader reviews.
So what about, you just explained what the metric for success is and how to get there, but what about you personally? Like, what's the greatest reward in writing for you?
That's so interesting because, what got me into this business, what got me into writing, aside from the fact that I needed to figure out a way to support my family and keep myself in shirts, and the career that I was in, I was like sick of and wanted to get out of. So what got me into writing, and what still gets me into writing, is that I love words. I love sentences. I have a love of just the shape and craft of how you squeeze ideas through the tube of these consonants and vowels. I just find it so fast. Just love it. There's a line in the Go-Giver Leader. There's this line where the mentor, Aunt Elle, in that book says that words are the greatest human invention ever. And then later in the book, she says to the main character, Ben, she says, words are the footprints of God. And he says, wait a minute. He said it was the greatest human invention. And she just says, that too. So I love words and I love the craft of writing. But what I've discovered, the real reward is getting an email from someone who I don't know and would never have known otherwise, and who says, man, I read your book and it totally changed how I look at things. It changed my life. It had an impact on me. That is an unbelievable reward, and I've already gotten that with the recipe. That's the hardcover. I've already gotten that from this book, just from my readers group and from the people that they know. That is difficult to measure in the sense of being a metric, but it is intensely gratifying and fulfilling, and makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, and I mean, I love that you're so in touch with what it's all about, right? Because at the end of the day, we write to communicate, and whether we're giving a direct message in a nonfiction book, or we're teaching through a parable,
Yeah.
or we're delivering a theme or a message through our fiction, we're communicating who we are, and we're communicating something we have to say about the world that we live in. And when people respond to that, that's what it's really all about.
This has been the Writing Gym Podcast with Andy Brixey and Annalisa Parent. To join the Writing Gym, visit www.writing-gym.com.